You must work on yourself. Really. And it's not enough to just go to a church building and play church, hooping and hollering and shouting and make friends and give your tithe office and then go right back into your hell. It's just an act. It's not real, and nothing is going to change. Nothing is going to change until you see what's going on inside of you. You are the cause, the reason of your cause and effects. Nobody else is. You're going to be surprised when you discover that. But you're not going to see it until you work on yourself. And working on yourself meaning to pay attention to what's happening inside of you. Because we all have all these ideas about God and about self and about Christianity and about morality and about this and that. And then we go to war with one another if you don't live it the way that your idea is. And every one of your ideas are wrong. About God, about Christianity, about yourself, about morality is all wrong. That's why it's not working. And some people hold on to dear life. They are, it seem as though if they let go of those ideas, it's like they're not going to know what to do with themselves. They're not going to know, who am I if I'm not my ideas? If I'm not my beliefs? Who am I? They're afraid of that. And so they work hard to stay there. Ideas like, and a few are occurring to me right now. Number one, ideas like Jesus is God. Everyone who believes that Jesus is God, it's not doing anything for them. It's just an idea. They don't know if it's true or not, but it's an idea, and even though they believe it, nothing changes. They still have inner conflict. Their hearts are still angry. They have fear, because everyone who has anger has fear, right? And that's what causes you to fight one another, by the way. But so anyone that believes Jesus is God, they have fear, they have anger, they have inner conflict, they have no love. But they won't question that. Questioning yourself. Okay, if I believe Jesus is God, why isn't that helping me? Why am I not free? Why do I not have peace if I believe Jesus is God? So there might be something either I'm not seeing about this or it's totally wrong. It's just an idea, a belief that I heard someone else say, and I'm sticking to it, even though it's not working. Because I'm afraid to stand alone. There are people who believe, another example, there are blacks who believe that they're the real Jew. If you believe that you're the real Jew, will yourself from trying to prove it. From studying whatever Bible they study and letting Satan make up some lies to you, and then now you're trying to prove that you're the Jew. Will that away. Because if you know you're the real Jew, there's nothing to prove. It's like a person who says, I don't care what you think about me. They're lying. They do care. Because if they didn't care, they didn't need to say, I don't care what you think about me. There's no thinking about, I don't care what you think about me if you don't care. When they say, I don't care what people think about me, they're lying. They're saying, I do care. Will that away. Will yourself to love your enemy if you have a free will. There are people who believe that Jesus was black. What the? With a fro. Can you imagine? And yet they have conflict and anger. That's why they try to prove that he was black, when really he was just a spirit. Will yourself never to worry again about anything or to live in your imagination if you have a free will. Isn't that amazing? Will yourself to never, ever, 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 ever again be lost in darkness, to run and hide from your ego. It's just an idea. All ideas are evil. They have nothing to do with God. They're just false identities for you to believe in and keep you away from ever finding yourself. Some people, even Christians, believe that there's racism, sexism, homophobism, Islamophobism, dad-be-dadism, Allahu Akbarism, white supremacism, anti-Semitism. Will yourself not to believe that, because it ain't working for you. All it does is build a war between you and your fellow man. It's just like when you join a Christian club and you all agree that this Christianity is the best, right? Your little religious thing is the best. Now you go to war with other Christians because you have an idea that yours is right. And every person with ideas think that they're right. And if you don't agree with their ideas, you become their enemy. Isn't that amazing? You must die spiritually from all of that. But it's not going to happen until you pay attention to you, until you let go. First, you got to see that you have anger and you have fear. Anger is fear, fear is anger, right? When you see that, you'll see when you really see it, not just intellectually, but spiritually, when you truly see it, you're going to see that it's wrong. It's been holding you back. It has divided you from the Father. And you'll go and forgive, and then the light will come on, and you'll start seeing everything else in that ego nature, and you'll be free eventually if you stay with it. Overcoming the ego is not an easy thing. And there are only a few people who are truly willing, just have had enough of living in their hell on earth, and they are willing to overcome the ego. And the only reason the ego is so hard, which is the nature of the devil, by the way, the only reason the ego is so hard to overcome because you have so many identities piled on top of it, you think it's you. And you think you're losing yourself. It's easier to go to church and say, praise Jesus. Praise the Lord. Allah bata. It's easy to do that. Ain't no pain in that. No pain, no gain. But to overcome the false self, it's more than a notion. If we didn't identify with that, we didn't have all these identities, it would be easy. You could overcome just like that. And you could be free right here on earth. Paradise right here on earth. Isn't that amazing? It's up to you. You can read the Bible till the cows come home, and then Satan will interpret the Bible, and you will still not be free. Because you're not working on you. And anyone that blames anyone, even people who are cruel to you, when you blame them for your reaction, it's you, it's not them. Yes, they're cruel, yes, they're evil, but that's their problem. But if you blame them for the way you're feeling, whether it's fear or fake love or whatever, you're never going to overcome because you're blaming someone else. And you can only be hurt if you're divided within yourself. If you're not whole, you could be hurt because your ego has you divided. Your mind, your thoughts, which are not your own, divide you between thinking and emotions. You're divided. You're not whole. And so if you want to be whole, you want to be one, you got to really not to be afraid to allow yourself to stand alone in this world. And it's not, standing alone is not something you make yourself do. You don't say, oh, I'm going to go and stand alone, right? When you're seeking this kingdom of God within, the Spirit of the Father will cause you to stand alone, overcome the world. And when the world come at you, you stand alone and just, oh, whatever, right? Because you're willing to spiritually die in order to live. You have once to live and once to die. And I noticed, too, once you overcome, as you're overcoming the ego thing, which is the nature of the devil, the thoughts and emotions, this idea of death, you lose fear of dying because you would know there is no dying, physical dying. Your body leaves the earth, but you don't die. You spiritually die from the devil's nature, the abnormal nature, to the true nature. You rise to the true nature. Isn't that amazing? So it's up to you. It's Bible Thought for Thursday. You can continue to play church, or you could be born again. You could be the walking dead, or you could be the walking living. It's up to you. It really is. The way has been made, but only a few are going to take that straight and narrow path. It's not easy. I can't tell you the number of people I've counseled with, and as they overcome the world, they find that they're all alone. That there's no one around that they can even communicate with about what they see. They try, and the feedback you see, well, they don't know that. What the? They're all alone. When in that false illusion, they thought they have friends and family and people that love them. They realized they never did. Fake love is an illusional love. It's not real. It's evil. And you'll die from that too, and then the real love will operate through you. But you got to work on you, and you got to be willing to endure all things. Meaning, don't complain about it. Don't blame anyone else. It doesn't matter how weak you are when you start out. You can admit to yourself, I'm so weak. This hurt. But stay on that straight and narrow path. You have the light of God that is guiding you now when you truly forgive. It's amazing. It's up to you. You can stay in your hell or you can overcome it. Because right now, everyone who has anger is living in hell, and it ain't about nobody but them. They don't love anyone. They don't care, not even their own children. They pretend to care when they really don't. It's about money, fulfilling the ego desires, and perceived power. Pay attention to the news today. It's all about self. Every angry person, whether they're in government, in media, in the cotton field, wherever they might be, so-called doctors, lawyers, contractors, no matter who, it's about money. It's about themselves. And that's why the world is just getting awful. They've told young people that they can be angry, pushing the religion of hell and calling it good. Woe unto the human being that call evil good and good evil. They'll call it anger good, even the Christians. Jesus was angry. You're not going to understand the nature of Jesus till you rise above the lower nature that you're living in. Because you just read the Bible or somebody told you Jesus pushed over the table in the temple and he was angry. And you say, oh, I got anger, so that's fine then. That's a deception from the devil. Christ had a higher consciousness of so-called anger, and it wasn't angry. Not like your lower unconsciousness of anger. The anger you have is vicious. It hate the enemy, hate itself, hate everybody. You don't love your neighbor. What the? You must be born again of the Father. You must be overcome the mother. And this is for men and women, every human being on this side of heaven, every human being. If you want to be free, you must be born of the Spirit of the Father. You must forgive your mothers. She couldn't help herself. Her mother did it to her, and she did it to you, and you'll do it to your children until you overcome that dark spirit. And it's not the mama spirit itself, but it's the spirit of evil that made a home in her when her mother turned away from her father. Ever since Adam and Eve days, when Eve turned away from her husband, it began. All right? And so it's still going on, but thank God he sent his son, and we can get out of it now. You can come out of hell by truly forgiving, seeing that you're wrong for judging. Because when you have anger, you're judging. When you're judging yourself. If you get to know yourself, you will see that everything you think about somebody else is really you. And that's why you are trying to do it to someone else, because you don't want to see that as you. So you're doing it to yourself. When you judge, you're judging yourself. And you're never going to be free until you stop. But you must forgive your mothers. Every human being on this side of heaven has an issue with mama. You can't help it. You're born through her. You become like her. And she's going to make sure of that, because she can't help it until she overcome that spirit. And it doesn't matter how much money you have or don't have, where you live or don't live, what color you are or not, male or female. If you want to be free, if you want perfect peace, if you want to be made whole, if instead of being so divided within yourself, if you want to come out of the cage of your imagination, you must forgive. Really, it doesn't matter what you do or who you are. It's not physical. Last Sunday, I mentioned at our fellowship that I had seen this documentary on Johnny Carson. And I don't know Johnny. I remember him being an entertainer. That's about it. But apparently, Johnny Carson was having trouble with his mother as well. And according to the story, Johnny Carson had an older sister, and then there was Johnny and his brother, 2 boys and 1 girl. And according to the story, the mama paid more attention to the girls than she did the boys. And as a result, Johnny grew up feeling unloved by his mama. And he was trying to get her love, her attention, which she didn't have to give anyway. But he was trying to get it, and everything he did, she never approved of it. She never said, "Oh, Johnny, that's pretty cool. Thank you." She always put him down or by not approving of what he had. And Johnny ended up going through several marriages, according to the report, looking for mama's love. And he never found it. As far as the story goes, I don't know. And that's every human being on this side of heaven. Money ain't going to do it. So-called success, which doesn't exist, by the way, ain't going to do it. So-called failure, which doesn't exist, by the way, ain't going to do it. You can become one of the greatest entertainers on this side of heaven and have buku money up the yang-yang, and you still, if you don't have love, you have nothing. If you haven't dropped the anger, you have nothing. If you're not forgiven, you are divided. And so Johnny's story was very interesting to me because I didn't know his story. I knew he was a little entertainer, but I never knew his story. This is from Cheat Sheet. Johnny Carson hosted NBC's Tonight Show for 30 years. Details on the tense relationship with his mother reveal Carson's mother was unimpressed with his career and apparently didn't find her son very humorous. Watch this for facts verses. Watch this.
I'd like you to meet my father and my mother. Sit here.
His unique brand of observational humor and snarky wittiness, combined with his cordial demeanor, resonated with audiences and critics alike. He was born in Corning, Iowa, to parents Ruth Elizabeth Carson and Homer Lloyd Kit Carson. Later on, it came to light that Johnny Carson wrestled with very active personal demons. He was notorious for being a heavy drinker, philanderer, and for having a short temper. In his adult life, these issues caused him serious problems, both in his personal and professional life. Although she no doubt did the best she could, Johnny blamed his domineering mother for some of his troubles. He once referred to his mother Ruth as Lady Macbeth, the toughest of them all. And his relationship with her was apparently quite toxic. They were on such bad terms that reportedly when she passed away, he didn't attend her funeral and quipped that the Wicked Witch was finally dead. He eventually moved away from radio and transitioned to television. After many twists and turns, Johnny took over as host of the late-night talk show Tonight. He was also a father of 3, as well as a 3-time divorcee. But even though he lived his life perpetually in the limelight, he rarely let the public know the details of his family life. Apparently, it wasn't very difficult to wind up on his bad side either. One person who did was Johnny's 4th wife, Alexis Moss, who put up with constant public humiliation when she'd say something that would irk her husband when they were on her honeymoon. The two spent the honeymoon in Italy in 1987. By all accounts, it was a pretty miserable affair because even though they were traveling on Johnny's luxury yacht, his mood quickly degraded. Reportedly, when Moss made a fairly innocuous comment that annoyed her new husband, he shot back at her, commenting that even though they'd been married for only 3 weeks, if she were to say something like that again, their union wouldn't last another 3. The two actually remained married until Johnny's death in 2005. When in the midst of divorce proceedings with his second wife, Joanne Copeland, it was revealed Johnny's alcoholism was at the heart of their marital troubles. It was also revealed Johnny was deeply insecure and routinely suspected Copeland of cheating on him. When it was discovered Copeland had a secret apartment where she was engaging in a clandestine affair with another man, Johnny's dark side came out in a disturbing way. Not only did he raid Copeland's apartment without her consent, but he also fell into a downward spiral of alcoholism, self-hatred, and depression that was nearly impossible to keep a secret. The fallout from this chapter would lead to him having a deep distrust for anyone, especially women.
Amazing. That is every human being on this side of heaven. But the buck can stop with you if you forgive. Your mama couldn't help herself. Her mama did it to her. And with the men, every woman you get involved with is mama. You're going to have the same issues. It's not going to solve the problem. Drinking is not going to solve the problem. Smoking is not going to solve the problem. Doping is not going to solve the problem. It's a spiritual problem. Why don't you get it? And then if you don't overcome it, you pass it down to your children. And the spirit of evil continues generation after generations after generations. And if we're all people, this is what's wrong with the blacks. It ain't racism. It ain't slavery. It ain't Jim Crow. It ain't systemic racism and all that crap. They're lying to you. It's that. You must be born again. You must overcome. Forgive your mamas and grandmamas. You're just going to be miserable otherwise. And y'all can fight all day long until the cows come home. And they're going to solve one problem, just two devils fighting one another. Or you can be free and stop fighting with the devil. Inside of you and outside of you, inside of others. Really. But you got to get to know yourself. And the people who are using you, they too are in hell, and misery love company. Why do you think evil people prey on other people to hurt them so that they can feel better? But they're not feeling better, they're feeling worse. And they call it feeling better. Evil people hurt other people intentionally. And Ruth, according to the story, were ruthless. Amazing. The woman is the man's God because he hate her. Every man hate his mama, and the woman is his God. You stop hating mama, the woman will no longer be your God. And see how Johnny couldn't live with them and couldn't live without them because everyone he got involved with was mama, and it didn't work for him. Even if they were trying, which is hard to believe, but let's say they were trying, it still wasn't going to work because he married the women he hated. You can't help it. That Satan became the woman's God when Eve listened to the devil, and the woman became the man's God when Adam listened to the woman. But it's been restored spiritually, but you must be born of the Spirit to know that, men and women. Don't let the world keep controlling you, making you think it's something that you're fighting each other for no reason at all. Zero reason. Reparation ain't going to do it. Affirmative action ain't going to do it. Licking boots ain't going to do it. You must be born again of the heart. Every human being going through the same thing. Situation may be a little different, but it's the same thing. Same spirit. Remember, you've heard me talk about Kinfolk's Corner down in Columbus, Georgia? When I was in the 11th grade, I believe. Yeah, 11th grade. I went to Indiana for a minute, but I went back to Alabama. I wanted to finish school down there because it was too rough. In Gary, the blacks were carrying on too much, fighting and carrying on. So I didn't grow up with that, so I couldn't handle it. So I moved back to Alabama. And during the summer, I would work in Columbus, Georgia. And we would go up there early. And Columbus, Georgia was about an hour away from Eufaula, where I live down there in Spring Hill. And we would go up there early, and we would hang out at Kinfolk's Corner. That's where the blacks hung out at. And they had some of the best breakfast, little cafes, black folks cafes and stuff. And it was fun, and they called it Kinfolk's Corner. I can smell that coffee and breakfast right now. It was so good. And so I've been telling you about it, and I didn't know if Kinfolk's Corner still existed. But apparently, I don't know if it still exists, but somebody gave a little history on it, which I never knew. I just thought we were black folks hanging out having fun. Just want to have a little fun. Ain't just having a little fun. Ain't nothing wrong with ain't having a little fun. This is from hmdb.org. From the 1840s, the building stood at the historic downtown intersection known as Kinfolk's Corner. The area was the meeting place for a generation of citizens from Columbus and neighboring Alabama counties. Watch this from Hog-On University. Watch this.
Now I am in Columbus, Georgia on Kinfolk's Corner. I had to come down here because it was the former building where they auctioned off the slaves, and it was also when the slaves or the other African Americans from Alabama crossed over. They'll come over here and they'll market on the Saturdays, and this was where they meet at, on this corner. I'm gonna turn this around so y'all can see this. But it was important that I come down here because the ancestors of ours that actually literally died at this building. I wanted to come down here and actually think for a second and just feel the spirit of some of my people. Because even though this building is here, I know it's blood still on the ground. And even though it's concrete and it's bricks and it's cement and it's all type of new construction buildings all around it, I know it's blood, our blood, still dripping in the bottom of this ground. My people are still crying from here.
Lord have mercy. I ain't know nothing about any of that. I ain't know nothing about all that. It's interesting, when I was going there as a teenager, ain't nobody said nothing about no slavery and auction off folks and all that. And there were older generations there too. Matter of fact, the truck that we all rode on was an older man who used to drive up there. He worked up there too, and we ride with him on the back of his truck. And so there were older men there and women. I ain't never heard nothing about no slavery and the blood on the ground and ancestor mess. We were just having fun. And nobody never had a conversation like this is my first time hearing that. Because the blacks were not into all that mess at that time. And I lived in Alabama. I didn't live in Georgia. And so he's right. There were people from Alabama and Georgia. They would meet there on their way to work there in Georgia. I worked at a car wash up there. I ain't know nothing about all that mess. And now he going back years later and talking about the blood and the ancestor. And giving the thing a whole different impression. We were just eating there at the Black Cafe, but didn't even think of it then as a Black Cafe, but it was. And the food was good. The breakfast was good. Because black people know how to cook. They used to. But it was a fun place to hang out. Generations after generation hung out there, and they ain't never bring up slavery that I'm aware of. And I hung out with older people there as well. But it was, Kinfolk Corner was a fun place to hang out at before you go to work in the morning. And then in the evening, when your ride come back up to get you, you go meet there and go back home. Those were the good old days when boys were boys and men were men. All this other mess, it ain't about life at all. It is not about life. They want you to be angry. If they did have slavery there or sold slaves there, that was then, whenever that happened. That ain't happening now, and it wasn't happening when we were hanging out there. Move on. If anything, you should appreciate the slave, because what if the Arabs were selling you, buying you from the blacks in Africa and bring you over here, you'll be stuck in Africa. Look at Africa today. And unfortunately, America is becoming Africa. They are using you folks. You are being used for money and perceived power. And they tell you all this stuff to keep you angry, because you cannot control a free person. You can control an angry person, because an angry person is not free.